recording. And I want to welcome all of you on behalf of the Center for Partnership Studies. I'm Sara Saltee. I'm the Director of Leadership and Learning Programs here at the Center for Partnership Studies. And just delighted to welcome you all to this Safe Conversations in Action webinar in partnership with Relationships First. We'll be sharing so much with you today. We have Riane Eisler with us, Helen LaKelly Hunt and Harville Hunt are with us. And for those of you who are joining us live today, we're so delighted you're here in real time walking through this learning together with us. And to those of you listening on the replay, we're so happy to welcome you as well. We know that all of our listeners will be hearing something in the next 90 minutes that really powerfully supports you in building the skills of cultivating partnership relationships. Before we go any further, I also want to thank our co-sponsors who helped us get the word out about this event, including the Dallas Institute of Humanities and Culture, Southern Methodist University, Professor Bonnie Wheeler, Philanthropy Women, and Texas Christian University. So thank you to all of you. And if any of you are here today representing those organizations, a really special warm welcome to you and all of our thanks for participating in getting the word out and helping people find this webinar today. Some of you may know that this is actually the second of two conversations that we've had with Riane Eisler and Helen and Harville about safe conversations, which you'll learn so much more about in just a moment. If you did miss the first one, not to worry, you're going to have everything you need in today's session to follow right along. But if you want to go back and listen to that earlier webinar from last September, here's how you can check it out. There is a rather long link on the screen, and hopefully one of our wonderful chat folks can put that into the chat box for you so you can find that later. If you don't catch it now, you'll be getting a follow-up email after this event with lots and lots of resources and links, and this will be among them, so you can go back and find that first webinar. And really in that first webinar, we kind of set the stage and talked a little bit about introducing the ideas that are going to be, we are going to go in greater depth into today, and not just greater depth, but we're really going to be able to see some really wonderful sort of improvisational, in the moment demonstrations of how safe conversations really works. So check that out. Let me just quickly introduce you to those of you who may not be familiar with our wonderful speakers. And today we have with us Helen LaKelly Hunt and Harville Hendrix, who are partners in both life and work. They believe that how we interact with each other in all contexts, in families, workplaces, schools, etc., is the key to our emotional, physical, and economic well-being. They are the co-creators of, as many of you know, from the chat we can tell, of the Imago relationship theory and therapy, which has spread globally through Imago Relationships International. It's an organization that has trained over 2,500 therapists in over 53 countries, and we really see that global reach represented in our attendees today. Helen and Harville are also co-creators with other relational therapists, scientists, and business professionals of Relationships First, which is a nonprofit organization that contributes to the creation of relational culture through the distribution of new insights from the relational sciences and through safe conversations, which we're going to learn more about today, which is a structured 3-step process to talk and listen with real connection. And I'm honored to introduce you as well to Riane Eisler, who is president and co-founder of the Center for Partnership Studies. Riane is internationally known as a systems scientist and an attorney who's really been a pioneer in the pushing for the human rights of women and children. She's the author of, most recently, a book that came out just last year, Nurturing Our Humanity: How Domination and Partnership Shape Our Brains, Lives, and Future. And she's perhaps best known for her best-selling book, The Chalice and the Blade: Our History, Our Future, and for her book, The Real Wealth of Nations, which was hailed by Nobel Peace Laureate Desmond Tutu as a template for the better world we have been so urgently seeking. So I want to welcome Helen and Harville and Riane. And before I turn it over to Riane to kick us off today, let me just share with all of you the sort of broad introduction to where we're going together. Riane is going to share with us just a little bit of context, set some context that really helps us to understand the power of relationships, both at the personal level and also at the broader level of our social systems. Then we'll turn it over, Riane will turn it over to Harville and Helen, who will introduce us to the Safe Conversations methods. And from there, Helen and Harville are going to go right into demonstrating for us with some special guests. You'll see we have Robyn and Curtis with us, who will be demonstrating for us a safe conversation. And then we're going to also be inviting volunteers to do another round of demonstrations and kind of walk through the Safe Conversations system together. So think about, as you're listening, whether you might want to volunteer for that second round of demonstration. And time permitting, we might even squeeze in a third round. We'll see how the time goes. With our remaining time, we'll open it up for a broader conversation and questions from all of you. So also, as you're listening, be thinking about your own responses and reflections to what you're seeing. And if there are any particular questions that come up, you're welcome to share those at any time in the chat box, and we'll get to as many of those as we have time for. So that's all from me. I want to hand it over now to Riane to talk with us about some context setting and the power of relationships. And Riane, let me just make you a spotlight video so everyone's seeing you. There we go.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome, and thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Helen and Harville and Robyn and Curtis for joining us. This is a really exciting webinar and something of an experiment for us. So I'm very much looking forward to it. And what I'm going to do, as well as you heard, is set this in a context, in the context of the shift from what I've called a domination system to a partnership system. Because yes, we're hearing a lot about relationships today. And that is really excellent. It is a consciousness, isn't it, that's emerging about the importance of how we relate to ourselves, to others, to our natural environment. And in fact, I want to say that I wrote a book about 7 relationships that will change your life, called The Power of Partnership, that really deals with this. But what I want to do now is to just simply talk about what kinds of relationships, because that's the crux, isn't it? Will it be relations where one person dominates and the other one is subservient or dominated? Or will it be relations in which we each and every one of us are respected, are honored, where our human dignity and our emotional well-being is a consideration? But this is why I'm going to talk to you about the larger context. This is not only a very, very important personal issue, as many of us know, but it's also a social issue, an economic issue. And this is something that we really need to understand, that the quality of our relationships, as you see in this slide, has a great deal to do with how our brains and our bodies function. And that in turn also has a tremendous impact on the health of our communities, of our world. So it is something that I have studied for many, many years. And I want to say that my new book that Sara just mentioned, Nurturing Our Humanity, How Domination and Partnership Shape Our Brains, Lives, and Future, combines my findings on the structure of these two very different social categories that transcend right, left, religious, secular, Eastern, Western, Northern, Southern, because you can have repressive and regressive regimes, well, that are Eastern, Western, Northern, Southern, capitalist, socialist, in all these categories. This book combines my findings with what we today know from neuroscience, which is that the very huge, huge importance of relationships, especially in our early years. Because what children observe or experience, we today know from neuroscience, actually directly impacts how our brains develop. So that, as you see in this slide, 85% of our brain architecture is developed in our first 5 years. And so the relationship, again, of children with their primary caregivers is enormously important. And fortunately, some of our policymakers are beginning to understand this. I just had a meeting recently with Governor Newsom of California, and I really congratulated him because he is paying attention to early childhood education, especially as well as resources for families. But of course, our brains, and this is very exciting, even though our first years are enormously important, and why we have to get beyond our old social categories, which, if you really think about it, don't pay attention. Well, they fail to pay attention to the majority of humanity, women and children, either marginalized or ignored. Whereas the partnership system and the domination system are an integrated approach, showing the connections between what happens in our intimate family, gender relations, and yes, our politics and economics. But getting back to neuroscience here, so starting from birth, what Nurturing Our Humanity shows is, and it's always a matter of degree, it's a partnership domination social scale, a biocultural social scale. Exposure to either domination or partnership relations directly impacts how our brains develop. And yes, this is where we first learn to respect the rights of others, or where we first learn violence, cruelty, exploitation, oppression, prejudice as normal, even moral. And that's why we have to pay attention to these relations. But the good news is that, as many of us know, because there's so much emphasis now on healing, right? And what we're trying to heal from, of course, is the impact of domination systems. The thing that we are learning is that the brain continues to develop even all our lives. So, and there's something else that we know today, which is brought out in nurturing our humanity. But I want to touch on this because I think that this is one of the basic premises of this wonderful method that Helen and Harville have developed, that we really are all wired for empathy and caring. But the question is, will these capacities be cultivated as they are in partnership environments, or will they be inhibited and compartmentalized? So it's only for the in-group, right? As they are in a domination environment. And that is why I am so excited to have this webinar, because we have the power to reshape our neural pathways and create not only greater well-being for ourselves and much better relationships, but yes, use the enormous energy and creativity that's freed in us when we shift from domination to partnership, and we no longer have to be so fearful, so tense, so defensive, really, to really also focus on policies that support partnership, what I call a caring economics or partnerism. So the bottom line is, yes, we can help each other heal from the damaging effects of domination relations. We can practice the skills of caring, empathic relationships, which is what Relationships First and this whole technology is about. It's a technology for shifting from domination to partnership relations. But we also have to pay attention to the context, because moving from domination to partnership healing in a domination environment where our social policies, where our norms really support these top-down relations and the normative ideal of the family, of the old so-called, quote, traditional family, which is a code, isn't it, for an authoritarian, rigidly male-dominated, highly punitive family. It's like trying to go up on a down elevator. So we also have to pay attention to create the context, the norms and the policies that support partnership. But I want to really now say that the first step really, it isn't really a first step, it's simultaneous, but a vital step is what Helen and Harville are going to demonstrate, which is that there are techniques, skills that we don't learn in domination environments, because why would we learn to empathize, to respect others, if it's going to be a top-down relationship where one dominates and the other is dominated? We can learn these skills. So without further ado, I want to hand it over to our wonderful Harville and Helen.
So there are safe conversations. There's a methodology that you can teach, but there's also a few concepts about safe conversations. And I'm going to start with a few concepts, and then Harville is going into teaching it. And I love that this is an experiment of those of you not just listening in this webinar, but also practicing doing something. So the concept of safe conversations is the space between. And this concept is, it begins with a new definition of relationship. A lot of people think a relationship is someone you've been with and you've got some history, and the relationship sometimes feels good, sometimes you're mad, and it's a relationship with history. we take pains to say a relationship is two or more people and the space between them. Now, the space between is invisible. You go, what are you talking about? Why talk about something that looks invisible? But actually, the space between people is an energy field. And we have to learn to steward this energy field in a special way. When it's safe, two people can connect. Sara, I love how you said that we're going to be talking on this webinar about safe conversations, which is teaching how people can talk and listen with real connection. I hadn't heard it phrased like that before, but when an energy field is safe, people can talk and listen with real connection. Now, if one of you has a look in your eye or a tone of voice that causes the other one of you to go, I'm not so sure how that person feels about me right now, or if there are any words that create anxiety, when there's anxiety in the between, connections ruptured. And I'm married to someone who's so brilliant. He's figured out the whole thing in saying a healthy relationship. It's the space between. When it's safe, we connect. If it's anxious, it ruptures connection. Now, the good news is on the next slide, which is once it gets anxious, you can get the safety back. That's what we'll be teaching you on this webinar. Just 3 little things. And again, Harville simplifies things. You use a dialogue process when you talk. You also need to know a little bit about each other's childhood challenges, because maybe something is going on that I get reactive, and maybe it has to do with something in childhood. And then third, if you're committed to having a wonderful relationship, both people need to commit to zero negativity and practicing things like appreciations. Now, the idea of zero negativity, oh my goodness, people go, please, I want to be authentic. I want to I want to say whatever I'm thinking. And with zero negativity, you can say whatever you're thinking. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. So you can deal with any frustrations, anything you're mad about. But if you deal with it with the safe conversation techniques, it puts you in another part of your brain. And when you communicate your problems with someone from the healthy part of your brain, Riane, I'll just say it like that, it's the upper brain, the neocortex, the healthy part of your brain, you have a better relationship, but you also have a healthier brain. So the last thing before I turn this over to Harville, for the first time in the history of the world, the relational sciences are teachable. And it was a psychiatrist that said that to us 3 years ago. She said, for the first time in the history of the world, you can teach relationships because of the breakthroughs of the neuroscientists in the 1990s. And those breakthroughs have to do with what Riane just said, that our brains develop throughout our lifetimes. And we, Riane, if I got it right, I think you said, we have the power to create new neural pathways. And folks, it is amazing when you practice talking to one another with the from the upper part of your brain, and the sentence stems in the safe conversation process put you in the upper brain, and you end up with a healthier relationship. So, and of course, there's a lot of information now about healthy relationships create a healthier body, and you have a longer life. So there are all sorts of reasons to do this. But Harville will now teach the specifics.
Yes, if you could see the next slide, Sara. So I want to just reiterate what Helen just said about, and what Riane said about how the brain can be changed. In other words, you can reprogram the brain. And what we've discovered is that this process that you're seeing here of the on-ramp of making an appointment, mirroring, validating, and empathizing, which I'll talk about briefly, actually integrates the brain so that a brain becomes less reactive and more responsive and relational as it integrates. And therefore, we begin to create a relational human being. And we are talking about creating enough of those that we would actually change the value system of the culture toward a relational civilization. So, and we think we can do it by teaching this simple process we're going to demo today that you see on the screen, Robyn and Curtis, and I'll say more about them in a minute as we introduce them. What I want to do first with all of us is to talk about this particular process with its basically 3 steps with an on-ramp. And the first thing is the on-ramp. I just talked to somebody this morning and they said the most important thing they learned about Safe Conversation was how to get one started. And that what we call that is making an appointment. It's an establishment of boundaries that hardly anybody ever boundaries another person when they want to talk to them. They just violate their boundary by saying blah, 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 blah. And the person may or may not be available for that. And if you're kind of a naughty person, you'll say, get out of my space. But if you're a kind and conforming person, you might say, okay, I'll listen. But nevertheless, what's important is that we honor boundaries. If we did that, we wouldn't have international war. So boundaries are important all the way through from the micro interaction to the macro. And we call it making an appointment. So we teach everybody, and you'll see Robyn and Curtis do this in a few minutes, before you want to talk, period, whether it's going to sit down and have a conversation using these 3 steps, or whether you just want to talk, but not have a 3-step conversation, like you just want to share something about what you saw on the way to work today, you always say, is now a good time to tell you what I saw on the way to work today. And if that person is not available, that's okay. And but maybe you could say, okay, they're not available now, but when are you? I'd love to talk. And they say, well, maybe in 15 minutes or tomorrow. But the boundary has to be honored. The second, once you get into this process, the second thing, the sender, we call the sender, that we want to teach every person who talks is that you need to talk about yourself, not about who you're talking to, whether it's your partner, whether it's a friend, whether it's a colleague, or whether it's somebody that you might work with in a few minutes. We call it sender responsibility. And that we've learned that if you use the word you, that you trigger anxiety in the person whom you want to listen. But if you start off by saying, I feel, I think, I want to share with you, that triggers openness, and that this can be measured in the size of the pupil of the eyes. That when the person is anxious, the pupil will get smaller, it'll constrict. If the person is relaxed, the pupil will get larger, meaning they're open. So it's impacts at the micro neurophysiological level. So we say, I want to make an appointment, it's now a good time to talk. If the person says they're available, you start off with I. So the second thing that we invite people to do in creating this safe space that Helen's talking about is to say, okay, let me see if I've got it. And this is called the reflective response. Let me see if I've got it. So I think if I understood what you said, it was probably something like this. That's very inefficient. So we ask people to learn efficient, short, succinct sentence stems, which they use. And it's like teaching them to play tennis. You have to train a specific muscle in order to play tennis well. And in conversation, you have to train train your brain with a specific thing. This is prefrontal cortex training to say, let me see if I got it. And if I did, you said that on the way to work today, blah, 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 blah happened. and it was like this and so forth. And then you have to do an accuracy check. Did I get it? Now, the reason we built an accuracy check is that research, that people are researching everything. It's so exciting. I'm a theoretician and a system builder, so I'm dependent on research and devour it along with Helen all the time. The researchers say that our brains in a resting state have an 80% discrepancy rate, meaning we only get 20% of what we hear accurately. Now that's, when I read that, that's appalling. I thought I usually got it all, but I assume I did. But then I understand a bit more about Helen's response, because if I only got 20% and I'm responding as if I got 100%, my behavior doesn't make any sense to Helen, because she didn't say that. She said I did get the 20% right, but the 80% I got wrong. So you have to do an accuracy check. So you say, did I get it? And the person who's speaking says, well, yeah, you got, and I also said, because you seldom ever get it all or get it all right. Except we discovered the practice of the mirroring process increases the accuracy rate enormously. And in fact, you can even get up to 100% if you practice the process. And it's sort of like the meditative space. You finally learn to shut down the movie in your own mind and begin to listen to the movie that the other person is showing you. Then the other thing in mirroring, so mirroring, as you can see, has a reflective, accuracy check, and curiosity. There's a lot of research now coming out on curiosity, and we build it into, and have been here for about 30 years, curiosity. Did I get it? Person says, well, you got it, and so you go back and forth till you got it all. Then you say, well, is there more about that? Which is curiosity. Now, curiosity increases, accuracy check increases safety, curiosity deepens safety. So because the person now knows you're really interested in listening to them rather than waiting for your turn to talk. So curiosity increases safety, and we do that well. Is there more about that? And the person may say, well, there isn't, or there is, and if you do, you mirror that back as well and do accuracy check. And then the final thing on the mirroring process is to summarize. So the summary is, well, let me see if I got it all. If I got it all, you said that you were coming to work today and it started raining and slowed you down, and you didn't get here until an hour late. Am I getting that? And that you feel really upset about it, and you feel really upset about it. Did I get it all now? Now, this is what we're going to demo today, because we've learned that we cannot teach at the first session a beginner person the 3 steps, but we want you to know that the safe conversation process, which is another term for imago dialogue, has to do with 3 steps, and the third one is validation. Validation is when the listening gets hard, because it says you have to say to the sender, you make sense. Now, you may say in your mind, that's crazy. I don't see any sense in that. But the point is, you're seeing the sense the sender makes to the sender's self. You don't have to agree with it or see it that way. This is called difference. Acknowledging and accepting difference is to validate the worldview of another person. And then you say what makes sense. And then you say, and given that, I can imagine you might be feeling. Then you move to empathy. So you can see how if you make an appointment, mirror, validate, empathic, you go through the 3 lobes of the brain, from the prefrontal cortex to the hippocampal, to the amygdala, to the limbic system, and then you also regulate the lower brain. So next slide, briefly. So here is the exercise we're going to do today. We want to show it to you, is that it's going to be an exercise in appreciation. And I hope that you have downloaded the mirroring and appreciation exercise. That's what Robyn and Curtis are going to do. And you see all the things are set up here regarding what people do, that it is a dialogical process initiated by sender who asks for an appointment. Then you make eye contact, take 3 deep breaths, and Helen's going to set that up. and then we will walk Robyn and Curtis through this. Robyn and Curtis are on the screen, as you can see, the beautiful couple, very dynamic, very bright. They are Safe Conversation leaders. They've become excellent in doing this process in the community in Dallas, and are practice coaches when the training process is done and on their way to becoming a master trainer themselves, or may already be there. I don't know. Are you all already there? You're already master trainers. Okay, great. All right. I wanted to get that clear. And they, of course, have done this so it will look efficient, but they're going to allow us to facilitate them so that you can see what you have to do as a leader to teach people the Safe Conversations process. When they finish, we want some feedback from you, not questions, but feedback. And then we're going to ask two of you, a couple or not, Curtis and Robyn happen to be a couple, but it doesn't have to be with couples. It can be with anybody. Two of you, if you would like to practice on Zoom, and Helen and I will facilitate you through it. And as we said, if we get through with our feedback on that and we still have some time, we'll do a third one so you can see it, because we've discovered repetition increases efficiency and competency. So we don't mind showing it to you several times, because we know it's going to take you probably 6 months or 9 months to really build this into your life. And just my last comment is, we also ask people to begin thinking about learning to memorize the sentence stems. And the sentence stem is that first one. Let me see if I got that. Did I get it? And to begin to use the sentence stems in spontaneous conversation so that every conversation becomes safe. And the third thing that we teach people is the use of the dialogue process in groups, and we call that communologue. We will not teach sentence stem practice today, nor will we teach communologue. That's another hour and a half each of those to do that, but we want you to know that is available, and at the end, Helen will tell you where you can go to find out where you can learn more about that. So today, Robyn and Curtis, and we turn you over to Helen, who's going to do what we call the setup.
So, Robyn and Curtis, we appreciate so much that you're willing to demo the Safe Conversation process for the webinar. Thank you both. You're going to begin to demonstrate the Safe Conversation process, sharing an appreciation with each other. And we ask any two people to start learning Safe Conversations with an appreciation, because then you'll get the mechanics down. And then once you get the mechanics down, you can use Safe Conversations with the frustration that you have with someone. But first, start learning the process, sharing an appreciation. And a lot of you on the webinar have brought someone to do this with them. Again, thank you for demoing. Now, which of you is going to be one of you becomes a sender and the other a receiver? Who will be the sender?
All right, I'll be the sender.
Okay, Curtis, thank you. So the sender sends a message, and Robyn, are you willing to be the receiver?
I am.
Okay. Now this means what the receiver does, once you've designated who is doing what, the receiver shuts down their thinking. They just, when the sender's talking, all they do is focus on the sender's words. They don't allow any other thoughts in their brain, such as a critique, or, well, maybe Curtis could have said it this way, or anything like that. You just listen and see if you got it right. So thank you. Now, the first thing the sender does is ask the receiver if that they'd ask for an appointment, that they'd like to share an appreciation, and is this a good time? So Curtis, would you see if Robyn is available? She said she was like last week, but is she right now?
All right, very good. Robyn, are you available for me to share our appreciation with you?
I am available.
Great. And the first thing before your words begin to exchange, Curtis to Robyn, and Robyn will mirror, let your eyes connect and just make sure you don't have a glare in your eye as you begin to talk. And actually taking 3 deep breaths is a good idea. We would like to invite everyone in the webinar just to slow down and pause. And when you take a couple breaths, your eyes, the pupil of your eyes open more than, we should talk about shifting from the glare to the gaze. And that communicates to someone you're talking to that you're open to what they have to say. And before Harville teaching you the sentence stems, Robyn, if Curtis is ever saying something and you begin to get a little flooded, there's something we call the pause button, which means you can regulate how much you have to mirror because you want to mirror correctly. Mm-hmm. So the pause button is, Curtis, let me see. I want to interrupt you. Let me see if I can mirror you back so far, and mirror that back and then see if you've gotten it correctly. So Harville.
Okay, so I'm going to give you sender sentence stems and receiver sentence stems. And my request is that you use the sentence stems exactly like a script, that you're not creative. Or come up with your own sentence stems, that you follow the script, and that you will use the sentence stems and then fill in the blank at the end of the stem with your own experience. Are you willing to do that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So, Curtis, the sentence stem is the first sentence stem is the appreciation that I have for you is.
Robyn, the appreciation that I have for you is that I really appreciate the fact that you're such a great encourager, and being a great encourager, that really is you know, it warms my heart because you're such a great encourager to me.
And so if I got that.
So if I got that, you said that one thing that you appreciate about me is that I'm a great encourager, and that that warms your heart.
Did I get that?
Did I get that?
Yes, you did.
Is there more about that?
Is there more about that?
Yes, there's more. And the more is that my heart is warm because when you encourage me, I have my times where I feel a little low and I'm kind of a little down on myself, and I'm very self-critical at times. And you just have a way of being able to relate to me and to really encourage me by letting me know about what it is that I do so well versus me focusing on what it is that I may have missed or I didn't do as well.
So if I got that.
So if I got that, you said that there are times when you, that what warms your heart is that that there are times when you become very self-critical about yourself, or it's during one of those low times, and that it warms your heart that that I remind you about what you do well versus you focusing on what you might be critiquing yourself on at that time.
Am I getting this?
Am I getting this?
Yes, you are.
Is there more about that?
Is there more about that?
Yes, I guess when I feel that way, it kind of it just helps me to kind of, you know, really look at life about what I'm experiencing at that time a little bit differently versus focusing on what it is that what I may consider my own deficits. It causes me to not stay in that place and to go ahead and move forward from there to really experience what it is that that you helped me to move on in that regard. So
let me see if I got that.
Let me see if I got that. So you said that it helps you it helps you not stay in that place, and it helps you move forward with can you please resend? I think that there's something I'm feeling like I'm not getting. Can you resend that, please?
Well, it helps me from not staying in that place, and then it really does help me to go ahead and move on. And when I move on, it allows me to really assess the fact that I can do whatever it is that I desire, because you have served as such a great encourager to me.
Okay, let me see if I got that. You said that because I'm such a great encourager, it helps you not stay in that place. It helps you to move forward and to move on and to focus on what you are wanting to accomplish. Did I get?
So am I getting that now?
Thank you. Am I getting that now?
Yes, you are.
And so is there more about that?
Know more about that.
So Curtis, yeah, good. I was going to
Sure.
say, in the interest of time, I wanted to give you the answer to the question, is there more? And so say the more is that when I feel what I appreciate in you, when you are an encourager, I feel, and fill in that blank. What's the feeling when you experience Robyn as your encourager? So when I feel, when you do that, I feel.
And Robyn, when you do that, I really feel really happy and confident about being able to really cast a vision, because you're such a great encourager to me.
So if I got that.
So if I got that, it makes you feel.
When I'm an encourager.
When I'm an encourager, it makes you feel happy and confident in being able to cast your vision. Is that the feeling?
Yes.
So is there more about that?
Is there more about that?
And so Curtis, say yes. The more about that is when I feel that happiness, it reminds me when I was little, or reminds me of an earlier experience in my life. And it could be a positive memory or a negative memory, but it reminds me when I was younger, littler in the past, whichever one of those matches for you.
Okay. Well, I'm encouraged, and I feel that way. And part of that, me feeling that way, is that when I think about a time in my past, I think about when I used to play basketball. I was a basketball player in high school, and I was very good. But I didn't perform in that championship game, and because I didn't perform in that championship game, I didn't do as well. It's almost like I missed all of how successful I was during that season. In that championship game, I felt so much that I was such a disappointment. And so, by you encouraging me, it lets me know that even though something that I experience is tough, that doesn't mean I have to be considered a failure.
So let me see if I got all that.
Let me see if I got all that. Oh, babe. So let me see if I got all that. You said that it brings up for you a time when you were in high school and you have performed really, really well during that season. And it was during the championship game. And that's a really big game for you. It's when the scouts are out, right? And you didn't perform well during that game. And it made you, it sort of wiped away all of the success that you had because you were so disappointed in that game. And so the encouragement that you feel, it reminds you of a time like that, because it reminds you of the success you can have, that you don't have to stay grounded in that disappointment, that you can be successful and move on and not have to stay in that place.
So am I getting that?
Am I getting that?
Yes, you are getting that.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And let me see if I can summarize it all.
So thank you for sharing that with me. And let me see if I can summarize it all.
And so the summary goes like this.
Summary goes like this.
The appreciation you have for me is?
The appreciation you have for me is that I'm a great encourager to you.
And when I'm an encourager, you feel.
And when I'm an encourager, you feel confident and you feel happy.
And when you feel that, it reminds you of an earlier time in your life when.
And it reminds you of an earlier time in life when you had experienced great success and then a big disappointment. And it reminds you of that you don't have to stay in that disappointing moment. It doesn't wipe out the success that you had, and it doesn't mean that you have to stay there. It means that you can move forward with your new vision about what you want to accomplish, that you're not a failure, you're a success.
Did I get all that?
Did I get all that?
Yes, you did get all that.
Well, thank you for sharing all that.
Thank you for sharing all that.
Thank you so much for listening, Robyn.
Okay. So now if you all were together, we were in the same room, and as a couple, we'd ask you to give each other a full body 1 minute hug. If you were not a couple, we would say make some sort of physical contact that you're both comfortable with. And that's the first stage, mirroring. We won't do validation and empathy because of time. And I want to thank you immediately for the amazing job that you just did. And for Robyn, you're experiencing being impacted, even though you live with this guy, being impacted by this memory that we could see.
Let me just mention that Curtis, after that basketball game, did anyone encourage you at that time, or did no one ever really sit down and go, Curtis, listen, you're super, or was it there or was it not there in childhood?
No, it really wasn't there. It was probably more there with my mom. My mother letting me know that that's not it.
It wasn't there because you didn't say that anyone was there. And so that's a very important moment in the dialogue. Was there someone there? Because Robyn has appeared in a way that you didn't have before, if that's right, Curtis. So that's very special. Sometimes the appreciation can reinforce something you got in childhood, or it just wasn't there before. And so so that makes that can really touch someone's heart and remind them that their current relationship is doing something that's healing.
So if we could now go to sharing, would you all take just a 1 or 2 second or sentence share, Robyn and Curtis, what it was like to do the process in this structured sort of way? Just what happened for you as an experience? And then we're going to ask everybody watching you to say what happened to them while they were watching you.
After you, sweetheart.
Oh, thank you, dear. For me, it is much easier being a sender than a receiver. And so imagine that. So Curtis is really good at being more succinct than I am. So I thought this was a great opportunity for me to continue to kind of tune in my ear, to just shut everything out and to listen. So for me, that's why sometimes if I'm like, can you please resend that? It's me really trying to tune in and focus. And I like to share that with people. So that way, if you feel like, you're a team, you're both trying to get it. So for me, it was still a little nerve-wracking being able to humble oneself to say, wow, I think there's something I'm missing, right? It was a humbling moment, which is good. I think that's good. And for me, it just really tugged at my heartstrings, just because, a lot of times Curtis and I are always about how to be better, how to do better, how to be more effective. We're always focusing so much on that the appreciations, it's nice to hear what you are contributing to making life better for the other person, and that you're a source of them feeling loved or encouraged or making their day better. So for me, hearing about the game, I've heard about the game in different ways, but today it was even different hearing about it from this lens of the idea of him. This was a new experience for me of hearing the game from a point of being disappointed on that day as though it had wiped everything else, all of his successes out, but him staying in that moment, that was new information for me. And so that really did just kind of tug at my heartstrings because, for Curtis, I think he's amazing. So it's hard to hear him sometimes get stuck in those places. What, love?
Well, for me, just sharing that, sometimes you don't think that something that has happened in your past, and whether it's, whether you were much younger. And I was thinking about what kind of stood out for me, and that reinforced that. And that memory of playing basketball was something that I wasn't quite sure, but that's what came forward in my brain. That was one of those moments that I felt that I was on top of the world as a high school basketball player, but at the time that I was supposed to be, quote unquote, demonstrate that it didn't, and then how it made me feel not as effective or as strong as I could, and the power of encouragement though that Robyn has demonstrated for me is why that memory came from.
Yeah, and I think what I heard Helen check out is that there was no encouragement then in the disappointment, and that there was not a pattern of encouragement in the past and when in your family. Was that also accurate?
Well, I'm the apple of my mom's eye, so that was never the issue. But the other encouragement came that really didn't stand out. Well, the people who were supposed to be most important to you at that time, that was my high school coaches and my peers.
Oh.
That's why I didn't get the encouragement.
That's why you didn't get it there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that was the pain coming from that experience when you're in high school. Okay, so that can come anywhere along the developmental continuum, from early in life to, because that's still a shaping time in the brain. So I think we won't process this more because we have a whole room full of people who may be waiting to say something. And our methodology at this point is to receive sharings, not questions. And that we'll take a few minutes. And Sara, maybe we should limit that to 5 or 6 or 7 minutes and see how it's going before we check and see if there's a second two people who might want to do this. Does that make sense?
Yes. So would you like people to share in the chat box if they have a reflection and then? Well,
they could share in the chat box, or if they have access, I mean, if they can talk, it'd be great to hear some people say something.
Okay.
I don't know if we have that facility today.
Yeah, what I'm going to do right now is there are some folks with hands up, and I'm going to lower all of our hands. So we're starting with a clean slate. And if you would like to share an appreciation, not an appreciation, but a reflection, go ahead and raise your hand, and I'll watch for those now. Please, if you are going to raise your hand, then just check with yourself, do I have a working microphone so I'll be able to be heard? And I think it is also fair to share your reflection in the chat, and you can communicate it that way. But it would be lovely to hear some other voices if there's anyone who would like to share something with us. So take a moment and think about that.
Yeah, and the chat box is also great. Here we'd see a lot more, but so don't not do the chat box. But if you do have something you want to say so we can all hear it, that would be great, and we'll take a few minutes to hear about that.
So we do have a couple hands. The first is from Phyllis Benjamin. So Phyllis, I'm going to see if we can.
Hey, Phyllis.
It looks like because of the version of Zoom you're using, I need to promote you to panelist to be heard. So this may put you on video. And so just a fair warning about that.
She is taking Safe Conversations to India. She's doing it here in Dallas.
Yes, there's Phyllis. Hi, Phyllis.
Robyn and Kurs, how long have y'all been together?
Probably going 8 years now.
8 years.
Okay.
8 years.
And may I make just one brief comment?
Yeah.
I'm really surprised. Like, I didn't know how this was going to work over video. And I was really surprised that, that the very minimal, the barrier that exists is very minimal. Like, I was still feeling very, the only thing I really missed out on was my hug.
Yeah, right. So that we can actually do this with two people in the world. Yeah.
Or long distance couples or military couples. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Phyllis, let's see if we can hear you. I'm not having any audio from you. It does not look like you're muted.
While we're waiting, I'm just going to fill space.
Well, go. We also have some other hands. Should we try someone else?
Other hands, yes.
Okay, so let's
Hear, not talk.
let's hear from Terry. And Terry, let's see if we can hear your voice.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, great.
Oh, hi. Gosh, it's such a thrill to be learning from all of you today. I just wanted to say that I had not realized how this process can help a person to identify what particular type of support they're getting in a relationship that can point out where they didn't have it before and what the effect was of not having it, and what the effect is of having it, and how that can be, better known to the sender through the process of sending, and also the receiver. It's such a profoundly positive realization to see that. Thank you so much for demonstrating that.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a hand also from Virginia. So Virginia, I'm going to see, let me unmute you and we'll see if we can hear your voice. Virginia
Hello.
Sanchez?
That's right. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love Imago. I love that it has now evolved into safe conversations and social impact at that scale. And my question is, how do you convince people of the need to use the method, to use the steps? Because I have shared it with many, many people, but that's the point where people get really stubborn and they don't get, or my way of enrolling them, inviting them is not convincing. It's around there, my question.
Okay, and so we're not going to deal with questions. We'd just like to hear responses to what you saw, heard. But I hear the question, and when we get to the end of today, if there's any time, then we could respond to questions. But we'd like to give everybody a chance to just share and us not do more talking at the moment. If anybody else wants to share.
We do have some more hands. How many more would you like to take?
So now we have, what, 25 more minutes for this?
That's right. Till the end of the webinar, yeah.
We will not have time to do another full demo. So maybe we can, let's see, Riane comes back on in about 15 minutes, right, to do the wrap up.
Mm-hmm.
So we only have 15 minutes. I would think that we could do some sharing and maybe then respond to a question or two to do that before we go on, because we're not going to have time to do two.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good learning lesson, is that it takes time to do this because it's a qualitative teaching process. So the quantity might not be there, but there are ways that people can get it. So is that okay with you, Sara and Riane, just to hear some more responses?
Hear some more responses and then answer that very important question.
Yeah.
That Virginia.
How to get people involved.
How because this is a challenge.
Yeah, and we'll come back to that. So let's see if there are more responses, i.e. sharing. What happens for me when I watch this, and then we'll have time for questions.
Okay, so for further reflections, we have a hand from Angela. And Angela, let's get you unmuted here. And
Hi, Angela. Yeah, she's still muted.
Yeah, my unmute button is not helping Angela. It's just not functioning. I'm not sure why. Angela, if you find your own mute button, maybe you have more control. I don't know why that. Sometimes it's just a connection issue. Oh, now you're unmuted. Let's see if we can hear you.
Hello, this is actually Andrew, not Andrew.
Oh, okay. Andrew, welcome.
Thank you. I just find it very insightful that as you go through these conversations, it's easier for people to clearly understand that they are being heard and valued, and that their opinion and the words they're saying mean something. And I think that as you go through this, I think it's really the pinnacle that makes people feel like you're actually having a safe conversation and you're being validated. So I just think it's a great, great tool. So I thank you for allowing me to, just listen to this conversation and add it to my library of tools, I guess.
Thanks, Andrew. Helen and Harville, I see that you've muted yourselves. Do you want to
say something to Helen and not?
Yeah, no, I understood. Would you like to take further reflections, or would you like to move into a different mode?
So I think we want to also hear from Riane, and Helen has also got an off ramp, and they would do one. There's a last slide that we sent you about where this.
Absolutely.
Contact us so they can go to there, and Helen wants to tell them a couple of things. So where is that?
That sounds great. I'll pull up those slides again. Let me just quickly.
So before going,
we won't worry about that.
To Riane for closing comments, I'll just
She's
say.
Gonna bring it up.
I'll just say that, my goodness, an appreciation. A lot of us, as you all may know, Harville and I had such a horrible relationship. We loved teaching, say, Imago, but we didn't do it at home very much. And my issue was before going to bed, I would tell Harville what he did wrong that day so I could help improve him. And I was great. I loved giving advice. And oh my goodness, finally we went to therapy, then we went to the divorce lawyers and we announced we were divorcing, and we discovered zero negativity and giving appreciations every night before going to bed. So this sounds like a minor issue, but in your workspace or wherever you are, pause and give an appreciation. That really, we have the marriage of our dreams, and we give 3 appreciations before going to bed. So thank you for learning, those of you who were just exposed to this. Going forward with Safe Conversations in February, there's the Science of Healthy Relationships, an online workshop for couples. And on the webinar, it says when that's happening. I mean, sorry, on the PowerPoint, it'll say how you can sign up for this February event. In March, there's a live workshop that will be streamed, but we're doing trainings. If you want to teach Safe Conversations, it's a great way to be it. The training program, you really get good at bringing it into your own life, and you're able to teach it to others. So that too, the PowerPoint slide says how you can sign up for training. The Imago therapy for Imago therapists also are just a fabulous network to help teach you how to do this process. And
that site is imagorelationships.org. So let's move back to now the question, Sara, and then that I think will be on point for Riane's closing to finish up and to make any comments she wants to make. So there was a question from Virginia about how do we get people to do this?
Yeah, what if you're resistant?
And so what we have learned over the years is 2 things. The first thing is we get people to do it by offering public workshops. And so people show up to improve their relationships. And when they're there, the workshop is the laboratory where people learn it, so they do it. And so consequently, once they are in a workshop and they experience it, we don't have to convince them anymore because they've had a lived experience that is convincing in itself. But I think the question that Virginia has, and so what if you don't offer workshops, and what if you're just trying to do it in some other place? And so the second thing we've learned is that you actually can't teach people, at least I haven't had any success of teaching people to do something they do not want to do. So I gave up on that long ago. You don't have to learn this, but I'm going to use the process with you. So when I talk to you, I'm going to say, is now a good time to talk? And then if you say yes, then I'll say something, and I'll ask you, can you tell me back what you heard me say? So so you kind of do it, but you have to do it in an authentic way. You can't do it in an instructional way. Or the other side of that, if somebody's talking, I'll practice it with them. So somebody's going blah, 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 blah. My day was sort of short. So I'll say, I'm not sure I got that. Let me see if I'm getting that. So I'll mirror them and say, is there more about it? That was interesting. Is there more about that? And then they will do that. But I have to do it with authenticity. And then you find that people don't know what you're doing because you're being authentic, but they do know that you become interesting. I know Helen used to have in New York long ago, when she was running another project, dinners, and she would put me at tables, and these were donors. She would put me at a table of donors, and she'd say, I'm gonna put you there. And I'm a very introverted person. I did not like sitting down at a table with 12 people I'd never seen before and talking. So I decided I'm not going to talk. If anybody talks around this table, and I'm going to mirror them. And so I would do that for, the hour and a half I was at the table. Then we would greet them on the way out at the door. And to a person, everyone around my table would say to Helen, you have such an interesting husband. And so Helen, first of all, said, well, what did you talk about? And I said, nothing. I said, nothing. I simply mirrored everybody who talked. So they got interested in themselves. So that's the other thing, is that when I'm in a restaurant, I mirror back a waitress or a waiter, and they begin then to connect with me. They produce better service. They want to come up to the table more often. We give them a compliment, which is another one of the things we do in the system, so that you can become a magnet of communicating by the way you do this yourself. So I would think those are the ways that we have learned to do it. And then the other thing is I have a daughter, Mara, who says, Dad, don't mirror me. I don't want to be mirrored. I just want you to listen. And so I would say, so if I'm getting this, Mara, you don't want me to mirror you. You want me to listen. And she would say, yes. And she didn't know that she had just been impacted by the fact that I mirrored her so accurately. So she'd break into laughter. And so it took some time for her to relax about that. But I think that you practice it, you go to a place where it's structured to learn it, and then you have to be authentic in doing it. So
and the last thing to say to that person is, it feels so good to be the mirror, the receiver, and to practice mirroring, because it is so good for your brain. I had no idea. I used to think I was mirroring Harville for his sake. My brain is so much happier living from the upper brain. I feel so much better these days. And I love listening instead of talking. I never thought, I always wanted to talk, and listening is really peaceful and joyful. And maybe what you were going to say ain't that important. And it's really fun. I love, Riane, how you said, let's help each other heal from the damaging effects of the patriarchy, of the domination, that of what the way Harville phrases it is the vertical, that Harville says we need to shift from the vertical to the horizontal. And Riane says we have to shift from the domination of the way we dominate in a relationship to partnership. And it does feel so good once you start it. Your brain loves learning to listen and mirror.
Okay, I think we need to stop now. We are into Riane's time. Thank you, Riane, for letting us have your space to do our thing. We love you, and we love partnering with you in these two projects.
Well, I love what you do. And I really want to talk again about contextualizing, because, what we know from neuroscience today is that, as I said, that actually we're wired for empathy.
Yeah.
And we're also wired to want caring connection.
Yes. Right.
And the domination system gets in the way. And what we're doing with these kinds of technologies that you've seen is both unlearning and relearning. We're learning skills that are appropriate for partnership rather than domination relations. So why do we have to do this? Well, most of us have to do this because we come out of cultures or subcultures as mediated by families, by other institutions, religion, education, economics, politics, where really we learned some very different lessons. First of all, gender. We haven't talked much about it, but what do children learn in this so-called traditional authoritarian, rigidly male-dominated, highly punitive family? They learn to equate difference, beginning with the difference in form between male and female, with either superiority or inferiority, with either dominating or being dominated, with either being served or serving. And then they have that template. They learn this before their brains are fully formed, before their critical faculties are formed. And they can equate that then with any other difference, whether it's racial. We see that in the United States, that it's not coincidental that people who have this kind of subculture and this kind of family are highly prejudiced. And experiments have shown this, studies have shown this, but it doesn't have to be based on race. I mean, look at the Middle East. It's Shia versus Sunni or Sunni versus Shia. And not coincidentally, the ideal norm in so many of these cultures is a rigidly male-dominated, highly punitive, authoritarian family. But they also learn something else. And this is why we really have to unlearn this by replacing it with different skill sets. Because what we've learned in these highly punitive families is that it's very painful to not obey orders, no matter how irrational or unjust. And we also learn to identify with the strong man or woman. In other words, we seek that because it makes us feel safe, but that safety is phony. We really aren't safe. And so we're learning how to feel safe by relying on what humans so yearn for, which is understanding, empathy, validation. That doesn't mean that you accept everything, by the way. There are human rights standards in partnership systems, but it does mean that you have empathy for the other person. So this is a very important personal and certainly couples and family technology. At the same time, it is also very important that we learn these skills in every relationship, but at the same time, as I emphasize, we really have to also focus on changing the larger culture. And how do we change that? In 2007, I wrote an op-ed saying, hey, politically, people who want a better society have to learn a very important lesson from the people pushing us back. Because, and I cited a survey showing that within a period of 10 years, when the question was asked, is the father the master, do you agree that the father is the master of the house? It jumped 10 points. Why? Because of all the effort that went into pushing the normative ideal for family backward towards the domination family. So policies. We at the center have developed new tools. I mean, this is a very important tool that Helen and Harville have for you. But we have developed a more economically important and socially important tool to influence policy. And it's called the Social Wealth Economic Indicators, which we're now working on to develop into an index. But why do we need different indicators of economic health than GDP? Very simply, because GDP doesn't tell us the real story. What we learn by using social wealth economic indicators, and I'll give you just one example, is that the United States, compared to other so-called developed nations, has the highest infant mortality rate, the highest child poverty rate, the highest maternal mortality rate, and not coincidentally, our nation, our wealthy nation, invests less than half of what other developed nations do in family support. I mean, think about that for a moment. That is where we have to think of politics, starting right there. It's not the only thing, but think of the connection between what children learn in the domination family and electing a strong man as, you know, as president or as a leader. The two are inextricably interconnected. So I trust that as we unlearn the norms that we've taught, because we have this heritage from more rigid domination times, and it always wasn't this way, by the way, and I'm gonna stop talking in a minute, because as The Chalice and the Blade, as my book Sacred Pleasure show, there were millennia when in our cultural evolution, we actually oriented more to the partnership side rather than the nomination system. So yes, these are human-made norms, and we can change them, and we must change them. In our time when the conquest of nature, which is part of the domination system, is about to do us in our time of nuclear and biological warfare, we have no choice. I mean, we do have a choice, of course, but this is why we hear so much about healing. It's really our human impulse to be authentic human beings and to create the cultural environments and the policies and the ways of relating that support rather than inhibit, as I said, our enormous capacities for empathy, for caring, for creativity. So people ask me sometimes if I'm optimistic, and I say, no, it's not a question of being optimistic, I'm realistic. I think we have to change. I also say sometimes as a joke that when I get depressed, I think of the European Middle Ages. Why? Because they looked a lot like the Taliban, didn't they? The Inquisition, the Crusades, the witch burnings, women had no rights, children had no rights. We have been moving, but against enormous resistance and periodic regressions. So we can do this. And I want to again thank Helen and Harville. I also want to thank Sara, who as always is such a fabulous facilitator, and Anne behind the scenes, and our wonderful couple that did this great demonstration. I mean, we humans need validation. We need encouragement. And yet, so many of us are starved for it, aren't we? And this technology is a way of getting it. So I thank you all, and I look forward to every one of you being, well, what we all are here, agents of cultural transformation from domination to partnership. So I thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
Helen and Harville, would you like to say a closing word, and then we'll just do a quick reminder of what people can expect going forward?
I would like to say what profound inspiration I get when I listen to Riane. It's like, we haven't sat down with whiskey and cigars around a fireplace yet, and talked about all of this. But every time I hear you talk, I want to sit down with you and hear the ruminations of your disciplined and informed mind and perspective. So I just feel honored to be in the same place with Riane. And Sara, you are a master technician to make all this. I know there's run-up preparation is so detailed, and Helen and I were kind of chaotic in getting stuff to you, and we kept doing it at the last minute. But you didn't blink, and everything was done well. So that's what I want to say is thank you for this opportunity.
I think if there is a closing word, I'll just mention how excited I was to work on a little paper on safe conversations in global feminism, because it's ready. This is sort of a launching, Riane, I feel like, to show that a lot of the feminist world hasn't yet understood the importance of healthy relationships in global feminism. And so I was working on this paper, and I sent it to Gloria Steinem, and she wrote back this morning. I sent it to her maybe last night or the night before. Gloria is with us in this. She, you know her phrase, we need to be linked, not ranked. And Gloria is so thrilled we're doing this. Tracy Gary has written in, was my mentor and inspiration, but feminists need to get it that this is part of what women have longed for, a relational culture.
And I read the paper, and I think that it's very important to understand that when we started with feminism, we really wanted to get a bigger slice of the existing pie. And now we're understanding that we have to bake a better pie.
Transform it.
And transform. And, the linking and the ranking, which of course is one of the themes that I introduced in the Chalice and the Blade.
Oh, that's right.
I think that we do need some hierarchies, but we need to exercise power differently, as you wrote, power with, but also power to, creative power. As symbolized by the chalice rather than the blade. Power to give and nurture and illuminate life rather than to control and to take life. And, these are symbols of power. So we've got a lot of remissing to do aside from anything else. But again, my gosh, we're almost at the hour, and I am going to let Sara have the last word here. But I do want to also acknowledge Anne from behind the scenes, who is just wonderful in helping us with the chat. We've got a great team here. And again, thank you all for coming and for being part of this. It was very exciting, this experiment of ours.
I agree. It has been very exciting. And let me just see. I would like to thank everyone who participated, Robyn and Curtis, Helen and Harville and Riane. What a beautiful job and a great experience. And just in terms of next steps, all of you who have attended today, but also everyone who registered and could not be present for the real-time session, will get an email either later today or tomorrow, which includes links to the recording so you can rewatch. Links to handouts, links to articles and further resources, links to videos that you can watch to help to kind of solidify the process in your mind before you maybe try it out. We'll also share the chat log from today so you can see what people were, the kinds of questions and comments that people were making as we went through. So just a very full toolkit will be coming your way by way of that follow-up email. And And I think that is all for today. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming and joining us from all over the world. We know this is just the beginning of exposure to this, and I know that you'll be following up eagerly with all of those additional learning resources and tools. And it's exciting to think that some folks from this call today will become trained Safe Conversations leaders. And we also want to invite you to check out the Center for Partnership Studies website, and you can learn about ways that you can participate in the partnership movement.
Can I add something, Sarah?
Yes, please.
Because we will soon again offer what we are already offering for self-study, the course with the 4 videos that I did called Changing Our Story, Changing Our Lives.
Oh, wonderful.
If you want to hear more and learn more about this work, you can actually start right now, but we are working on it as a self-paced course with more frills. So stay tuned.
Yes.
Great.
Good reminder. And if you're on the call today, you've also been added to the mailing list and can get notifications when those new things are coming online from both the Center for Partnership Studies and from Relationships First. So again, thank you to everyone for being with us today, and be well. We'll close the recording now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye to everyone.